Hey, how's it going, Paul?
Sir, how are you?
Doing excellent. Doing excellent. We got a Universal Championship match coming up on Friday. They're going to be involved, and it's going to be Roman Reigns, Braun Strowman for the championship on the season premiere of SmackDown. Any, not predictions, but spoilers for what you can offer coming into this match on Friday night?
Yes, here we are in Spooky Month, and the main event of the season premiere of Friday Night SmackDown will see Roman Reigns slay a monster just weeks before Halloween.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't get much better than that. I mean, it's perfect, timely with Halloween coming up in a couple weeks. Let's say Roman beats Braun on SmackDown, which he will. It's a spoiler. He still has Jey Uso to deal with at Hell in the Cell later on this month. What have been your thoughts on how the whole story is unfolded over the last month, with a lot of people calling it the best thing going in WWE today?
I agree with the assessment that it is the best thing going in WWE today, and I wouldn't limit it to only WWE. I think it's the best story on television today.
Mm-hmm. And why was now, do you think, the perfect time for you and Roman to join forces? And it's been teased for a couple of years now. I mean, you've gone on the record in saying that you've wanted Roman as a client dating back 4 or 5 years. So why was now the perfect time for something like this to happen on WWE TV?
Well, if you look at how Roman Reigns debuted in WWE, Roman Reigns debuted 8 years ago this month as part of the Shield, which was brought in to protect the title reign of CM Punk. Mm-hmm. And as was revealed by Vince McMahon in Las Vegas, of all places, a few months later, Paul Heyman was behind the Shield. So this has been in the works for 8 years. And the time was never right to pull the trigger on pairing Roman Reigns with Paul Heyman. And if you look at the convergence of circumstances that's happened all in the past 8 or 9 months, then the time was truly perfect. This was a perfect storm in which we should pull the trigger on pairing Roman Reigns with Paul Heyman.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it was well worth it? Because, again, a lot of people have been pulling for this, again, 4 or 5 years ago when Roman was first, feuding with Brock, going into WrestleMania 31. Do you think the wait was worth it for fans, for yourself, for Roman to finally be getting it now after all the backlash that Roman has gotten? Because it feels like the 5 years of buildup that we've gotten up to this point, it made that moment of, you turn or Roman turning to you on SmackDown a month ago saying it's not a prediction, it's a spoiler, the big Paul Heyman guy reveal. It made it that much more epic because it happened after all these years of the fans, turning on Roman Reigns, stuff like that. You think it made it that much more epic for it to happen now as opposed to like 5 years ago?
I don't think either Roman Reigns or I were ready for this before 2020. Mm-hmm. Neither one of us was ready. And part of the reason for that is Roman Reigns is just now entering his prime. And if you take a look at the first 8 years of Roman Reigns' body of work in WWE, it's all been the buildup to this moment. Roman Reigns is entering the stage of his career that will be the defining years of his WWE tenure. Mm-hmm. And before 2020, Roman Reigns was still establishing himself as a major box office attraction, B, a multi-time WrestleMania main event, C, a multi-time top champion, and D, a legend, a Hall of Famer in the making. And now that he's established all of that, now it's time for Roman Reigns to enter that Hall of Fame stage, that legendary stage of his career, that absolute no competition at the very top echelon, the Mount Rushmore stage of his career starts now. And everything else that has happened in the past 8 years was simply the buildup to this moment.
With this version of Roman Reigns that we're seeing right now, the tribal chief Roman Reigns, to be more specific, you mentioned your interactions with Roman back in 2012. And again, you guys have had a very checkered history for the past 5 years on TV and Roman's many feuds with Brock Lesnar and whatnot. You mentioned right there that the best is yet to come for Roman Reigns. Is this the version of Roman Reigns you think that you always envisioned that Roman could be in the last 5 years when you initially kind of scouted him many, many years ago?
100%. The Roman Reigns that you see today could not be presented even a year ago. Mm-hmm. He was still too young a year ago. But now that Roman Reigns, both on camera and behind the scenes, has the experience, has weathered all of the storms, both on camera and behind the scenes. Now that he has a few more years to him in terms of chronological age, now Roman Reigns is ready. Now Roman Reigns is ready to present a persona that can accurately describe the weight and the pressure and the enormous burden that is placed on a moment-by-moment basis on the absolute number one top superstar in the entire universe of sports entertainment. And before now, he was still too young. It was always this young attraction at the top of the heap. And now Roman Reigns is a seasoned veteran defending his turf against everyone that wants to knock him off his perch and become the tribal chief, the big dog, the number one attraction in WWE and in all of sports entertainment.
In working with, so closely with Roman these past 2 months, again, we're still very early on in the alliance of Paul Heyman and Roman Reigns on WWE television. And working closely with him, has there been anything that has surprised you so far from working with Roman Reigns, something that you may not have thought he was capable of? Like we saw an all-new aggressive side of Roman. And he's been aggressive before. But the side of Roman that we saw at Clash of Champions was something that we've never seen before from Roman Reigns in the last 8 years in WWE. Has there been any one specific thing that has surprised you so far about Roman Reigns and working with him?
Two things. Number one, the learning curve. Roman Reigns' learning curve is like no one else's I've ever worked with the possible I can't even say exception. The only two people I've ever worked with that had this level of a learning curve were Brock Lesnar and Ronda Rousey. Mm-hmm. Their learning curve was not week to week, was not day to day, was not hour to hour or minute to minute. It was moment to moment. And Roman Reigns' learning curve is as fast, if not faster than that. Number two, the manner in which Roman Reigns rises to the occasion every Friday on SmackDown in his level of performance, I have never, as a talent, been challenged to up my game so much every week as I am right now every Friday with Roman Reigns. The difference in the man, the performer, the talent that I get to work with every Friday, the difference in him the next Friday is indescribable. He walks in the door every Friday driven and determined to make all previous performances pale by comparison. And the challenge for me is to keep up with him. Mm-hmm. Because I think we are seeing Roman Reigns aspire to a level of greatness that no one else in the history of WWE or sports entertainment has ever achieved before. And it is truly a lofty goal of mine simply to keep up with him.
And working with Roman this last couple of months, again, it's made for some of the best TV in the last month on anywhere. Again, not just in WWE, but anywhere in wrestling, as you mentioned earlier. Is this something that, again, you mentioned how this has been in the works for a long time, that Roman has always been open to? Because again, there could be the hesitation there where it's like, you know, I'm the top dog, no pun intended, in WWE. I'm the top babyface in the company. Maybe going heel, it would be a risk. But so far, it's proven to be the best experiment that the company, you, Roman, could have done. Was there any hesitation there, as far as you know, in turning Roman into the Roman Reigns that we're seeing today that didn't really come to light until recently?
I would like to think the Roman Reigns character is so progressive that we can do away with the antiquated notion of heels and baby faces, protagonists and antagonists, good guys and bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
I think anyone who watches contemporary dramatic television, be it Better Call Saul or Peaky Blinders, will see compelling, riveting characters that are placed in compromising situations that they have to navigate their personas through. And that there will be times where these characters do things that are unscrupulous, and there are times where these characters will do things that every viewer can relate to. So what we are trying to present here is a forward-thinking character that cannot be confined or constrained by definitions and labels that have been placed on previous personas, whether it be in WWE, sports entertainment, or dramatic television in the past.
Mm-hmm. And obviously with this match coming up on Friday, it's the season premiere of SmackDown. So we'll talk about SmackDown for a moment. You have a very decorated history with SmackDown, not just recently with Roma, but obviously dating back to the early days of the brand split in 2002, having a very major influence on the exciting era that was for the show, both behind the scenes and in front of the camera. How have you noticed, that was 2002, 18 years ago, how have you noticed the atmosphere of the Blue brand change from what it was then when you were running the show and a big part of it to what it is now as we approach the season premiere of SmackDown on Fox this Friday?
Well, back in 2002, SmackDown was on a fledgling network called UPN,
mm-hmm.
where Dean Valentine was ready to pull the plug on a multi-million-dollar broadcast or cable cast.
Mm-hmm.
No, broadcast at the time. Today, SmackDown is on Fox Network, available on a global basis with global distribution, and is a multi-billion-dollar licensed franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the difference between 2002 and 2020 is not just 18 years, but the exponentially larger value of the brand itself.
How real is that brand split mentality of like, we got to beat Raw? Because, you know, that was a big part of why SmackDown was superior to Raw, especially quality-wise in 2002, 2003. Do you notice that's still prevalent today as we come off the draft? Or is it something that's kind of been a little lax lately in the last couple of years, as far as from what you've noticed?
I am not in the WWE business. I am not in the SmackDown versus Raw business. I'm in the Roman Reigns business right now. And I can attest to the fact that whether or not the competition between the SmackDown locker room and the Raw locker room exists or not, the competition that Roman Reigns feels with every single solitary other member of the roster, male and female, is extraordinarily authentic to Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns wants to do things on SmackDown that have never been done before. Roman Reigns wants to accomplish a level of performance that has never been accomplished in WWE before. Roman Reigns aspires to eliminate any other three contenders to be on Mount Rushmore with him and be the sole figure on WWE's Mount Rushmore when this tenure with me on SmackDown is over. So I don't know what level of competition Raw feels towards SmackDown or SmackDown feels towards Raw, or the sports entertainers and superstars on Raw feel against the sports entertainers and superstars on SmackDown, or vice versa. But Roman Reigns feels that competition against everyone, which is why I love working with Roman Reigns, because that's how I feel every single time I perform.
In addition to Braun Strowman on Friday and Jey Uso at Hell in the Cell, who is one person that you are most excited at some point, whether they be from Raw, SmackDown, it could even be from NXT if you wanted to, that you're most excited to see clash with Roman Reigns on SmackDown for that Universal Championship? It could even be a Rock if that floats your boat.
Well, anybody that I mention, I would be advocating for their box office appeal.
Mm-hmm.
And since I don't derive any money from anyone else's box office appeal besides Roman Reigns, I'm hesitant to endorse anybody as a box office attraction because I'm not making any money by doing so.
Mm-hmm. What about Brock Lesnar? Is that an option at some point? If we see Brock Lesnar resurface in WWE, is it more likely we see them that we see that rekindling of the rivalry from a couple of years ago, or is it more likely we see an alliance, or they're just their own separate entities?
Well, here's something that's not a news flash. Brock Lesnar does whatever Brock Lesnar wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
So if Brock Lesnar feels like returning to WWE or UFC or getting into NASCAR or dunking a basketball against LeBron James, Brock Lesnar is going to do whatever the hell Brock Lesnar wants to do. So it would be remiss of me to give any clues as to what Brock Lesnar is thinking, because Brock's going to do whatever Brock wants to do. In terms of The Rock, I would bring to your attention that Roman Reigns never called out The Rock. Mm-hmm. Paul Heyman never called out The Rock. Neither one of us was looking for publicity by using The Rock's name. The Rock watched SmackDown, saw how Roman Reigns was head and shoulders above everybody else in WWE, and The Rock started throwing around Roman Reigns' name because The Rock wanted the rub from the single biggest box office attraction in sports entertainment today and Fox Network's biggest star, Roman Reigns.
With Roman Reigns as well, I mean, you're doing great work with him on SmackDown the last couple of weeks as an on-air character. But again, in the past, you've served as the executive director of Raw. You've been in charge of SmackDown. You've worn a lot of different hats, Paul, in WWE over the course of the last 2 decades. You've been a commentator before as well. Do you have a preference, whether it be, do you enjoy just being an on-air character and not having to deal with the behind-the-scenes backstage stuff, or were you able to find the right balance and enjoy doing both?
I've enjoyed every position I've ever held, or I wouldn't be holding that position. I'm someone that operates out of passion for what I'm doing. And if I'm dispassionate about what I'm doing, I fail miserably at it. I'm just not good at it. I have to believe in what I'm doing. I have to be quasi-obsessed with what I'm doing, or it doesn't last long. I'm just no good at it. And that's something that has driven me to some very high highs in my life, and it's something that exposes me, you know, in a lifetime of peaks and valleys, to the valleys when I'm not passionate about what I'm doing, because if I'm not passionate about it, I pretty much suck at it in life.
Before Roman Reigns, and obviously other than Brock Lesnar, we haven't seen you manage anyone else in WWE since, I don't know, Cesaro, which would have been 6 years ago. We've seen you with Curtis Axel, Ryback, obviously CM Punk as well. That was many, many years ago. So in the last 6 years, were you primarily focused on just being a sole advocate for Brock Lesnar? Was there no one else that you wanted to endorse as a Paul Heyman guy? Maybe because some of the other people didn't work out, whether it's obviously beyond your control sometimes, but why hadn't we seen a Paul Heyman guy until the Roman Reigns alliance came to be just recently?
Well, I don't know if Roman Reigns is a Paul Heyman guy as much as Paul Heyman is a Roman Reigns guy.
Okay.
And I think I would submit that is the different dynamic between what I did with Brock Lesnar and what I do with Roman Reigns. With Brock Lesnar, you had a very interesting relationship. In 2002, I was this quote unquote legendary manager that took the next big thing under his wing. And a former NCAA Division I heavyweight champion, and I navigated his trajectory to the very top of WWE and all of sports entertainment. With Roman Reigns, you have an 8-year veteran, a 4-time WrestleMania main eventer, someone who, if he retired today, is a first ballot WWE Hall of Famer, and someone who could retire today if he wanted to. But Roman Reigns takes a look at his career and he realizes the best is yet to come. As the expression goes, you ain't seen nothing yet. And Roman Reigns aspires to not only be on top, but to stay on top. And the burden of being on top, the responsibility and the accountability and the challenge of staying on top is so enormous that you need someone to be a special counsel in how to deflect all of these challenges that come up against your status and position of being the undisputed #1 top box office attraction in WWE. And who better than I to protect Roman Reigns' position and status as the undisputed #1 top box office attraction and persona in WWE. And that's a huge difference between my role serving Brock Lesnar and my role serving Roman Reigns.
Yeah, most definitely. Just a completely different dynamic, which is why it works, because they both work wonderfully and, for different reasons. Final few questions for you, Paul. First and foremost, you mentioned Ronda Rousey earlier, who obviously, like you mentioned, the learning curve there. She was incredible from the moment she debuted in the company 2 years ago. Did you ever have any aspirations of making her the first Paul Heyman girl? Because there was a lot of talk about that at one point amongst fans, but obviously never really materialized. Was that something you were ever interested in bringing to TV, as making her the first Paul Heyman girl on WWE television?
I would never limit any contribution that I could make to Ronda Rousey's presentation or Ronda Rousey's vision for herself in WWE or outside of WWE. Working with Ronda Rousey is one of the greatest honors of my personal and professional life. She is a barrier breaker, a trendsetter, and every other analogy that you can give. Ronda Rousey is the disruptor of the status quo. Never, ever willing to rest on her laurels. Always looking to blaze a new trail, to not just redefine the role that she's placed in, but to find something bigger and better and grander for that role Look what she did for women's MMA. Look what she did for the presentation of women in WWE.
Mm-hmm.
She not just redefines a role, she creates an entirely new definition for everything that she does, and she's still in her early 30s. So I would never limit myself to any opportunity that I may have to work with Ronda Rousey. It is one of my life's greatest honors.
And final two questions for you. Obviously, there's been a lot of rumblings this year from AJ Styles regarding you, Paul, and whatnot. Is a response to AJ Styles and everything that he said this year even worth the time, or is it something just ignored? Just to kind of move on from.
In the 50 or some odd weeks that I was the executive director of Monday Night Raw, I never discussed being the executive director of Monday Night Raw. And the reason why is because when you're in that position, you are privy to the top echelon inner sanctum of the inner workings of WWE. And along with that position comes an expectation of confidentiality and secrecy. And I never violated that confidentiality or secrecy while the executive director, which is why I didn't do any interviews discussing my role as executive director.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't discuss anything I did as executive director, whether it's something worthy of praise nor criticism,
mm-hmm.
because I will respect the responsibility that I had to keep everything that I did as executive director secret and confidential, whether that is in the face of criticism or praise that has been bestowed upon me.
And final question for you, Paul. Obviously, the ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Heyman, line, meme, it's become on the internet is so huge, and it's so, connected to who you are, your on-air persona. It's just part of who you are, which is awesome. My girlfriend's dad is you're his favorite WWE superstar, not even a wrestler. It's you. And he's always doing the "My name is Paul Heyman" bit because, it's one of the most memorable lines in WWE right now. How often do you get impersonated? And, how often does that happen, whether it be in public, online, stuff like that? And what are your thoughts on the various impersonations that people have of yourself?
Well, I applaud everyone and admire their great taste when they choose to imitate me. I think we would be living in a far better world if more people would act as Paul Heyman acts.
Mm-hmm.
The ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Heyman shtick is based on a very simple premise. Who the F are you?
Mm-hmm.
I have never liked when people come on television or at a live event and instantly pontificate. When you come on TV or in a live event 2 weeks ago on SmackDown, well, wait a minute, who the hell are you? and I've always based what I do on who am I? What am I talking about? What's the premise, and why should you care? And those are the questions that I try to answer in everything that I say.
Mm-hmm.
So when I come out on television, I like to at least let you know who I am. And I think it would behoove everyone introduce themselves as if no one knows who you are. And it will help you in life. I mean, even, when you get into an Uber even, hello, hey, how are you? My name is Joe. Nice to meet you, Joe. My name is Charlie. Hello, Charlie. Where are we going today? Oh, I'm going to the airport. Okay, Charlie, let's drive to the airport. There you go. You've introduced yourself. I know who you are. I know the premise of this Uber ride.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing goes in anything that you do, whether you're ordering at a restaurant or anything else that you do. If you establish who you are and what the premise of this conversation is, the interaction is going to be much better for everyone involved. Mm. And I must say, I admire your girlfriend's father's taste, by the way.
He's a big fan. I told him I was talking to you yesterday. He almost freaked out. I think he thought I was lying, which was pretty funny, but I'll have to show him that clip. You'll appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Paul, for the time. People can catch you on SmackDown in the corner of the Tribal Chief, Roman Reigns, as he defends the Universal Championship against Braun Strowman in the season premiere of SmackDown. Thanks a lot, Paul, for the time. Best of luck with everything, and take care. Have a great day, Paul.
Thank you. The pleasure was all mine.